Good afternoon. The first item of business this afternoon is portfolio questions. The first portfolio is Constitution, External Affairs and Culture and Parliamentary Business. I invite members wishing to ask a supplementary question to press the request to speak buttons during the relevant question. And I call question number 1, Maggie Chapman.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on how its work on international development and support for humanitarian aid is being used to ensure the safety and security of those who are fleeing war and persecution.
Cabinet Secretary Angus Robertson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Government, through its Humanitarian Emergency Fund, continues to respond quickly and decisively to overwhelming humanitarian crises across the world by providing much-needed financial support, and enables operations of agencies and charity organisations in conflict regions to deliver services to reduce threat to life and well-being for communities affected by conflict and by persecution. The Scottish Government works with our Standing Humanitarian Emergency Panel and Disasters Emergency Committee to ensure funding is prioritised based on urgent need and established on the principles of humanity, neutrality and impartiality in support for peace in regions affected by conflict.
Maggie Chapman.
Yesterday's announcement by the UK Labour Government that it will slash its AIDS budget by £6 billion and spend that money on so-called defence is an outrage. Over 300 million people around the world are in dire humanitarian need right now. The UK's colonial past creates a particular moral responsibility to those still paying the price for imperial exploitation, and we shouldn't be giving money to those profiting from genocide. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree that now is the time to step up and tackle global poverty, conflict, insecurity and climate precarity, and will he commit to seek new ways to use our public money for peace rather than war?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, may I begin by welcoming the UK Government's commitment to increased defence spending at a time of such acute need across Europe. Having said that, I am deeply disappointed at this cut in overseas aid by the UK Government, which is the lowest percentage of UK finance spent on aid in a quarter of a century. This is a time when globally we all need to be stepping up to support the poorest and the most vulnerable communities in the world. And the Scottish Government is committed to supporting our partner countries through international development and climate justice funding, while also responding to global humanitarian crises as a responsible, compassionate and good global citizen.
Good question 2, Faisal Chowdhury.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how it is working to increase the number of film and television productions created in Scotland.
Cabinet Secretary.
We're committed to see our screen sector grow with more Scottish-originated productions to showcase the incredible talent that we have here in Scotland. We support Screen Scotland, our dedicated public agency for screen, through grant and aid funding, and will increase their budget by £2 million in 2025-26 to £11.25 million overall. This allows them to continue their excellent work to nurture locally originated content, develop skills and training opportunities and education for the next generation, as well as increase inward investment. We continue to urge the public service broadcasters and Ofcom to ensure greater support for Scottish-based productions, and I recently met with Ofcom and the BBC to set out our clear expectations for fairer investment and representation in Scotland.
Faisal Chowdhury.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for the answer. Recent report claimed BBC show The Traitor was classed as a Scottish commission, despite most production staff being based outside Scotland. Practices like these concentrate jobs in London and South East England, forcing Scots to leave for better opportunities or quit the industry entirely. Can the Cabinet Secretary outline how the Scottish Government is incentivising productions companies to choose Scotland? And can he update us on discussion he has had with stakeholders regarding Made in Scotland rules?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, may I begin by commending Faisal Chowdhury's question and the content and tone of it, because firstly I think we need to recognise that the direction of travel in terms of more Scottish productions especially for public service broadcasters, has been increasing, and that's a good thing. Having said that, there are rules there to make sure that we get the maximum value in support of our screen sector in Scotland. And he raised a very specific case, and that has prompted me to hold meetings directly with Ofcom and with the British Broadcasting Corporation to ensure that rules and the spirit of the rules are upheld, and I'm delighted, as I assume I'm hearing from Mr Chowdhury, that there is cross-party support for this. I hope the BBC and Ofcom are listening very closely to what he has said and what I have said.
Number of supplementaries. I'll try to take all of them, and they'll need to be brief. Ben McPherson.
Another related area where Scotland has strength is the production of advertising. And I know that a number of agencies have reported to me, including in my constituency, that there are concerns about both Scottish Government advertising and private advertising being procured out of Scotland. And I'd be grateful if the Cabinet Secretary could engage on this issue. He'll know that I've written to him in recent times.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, firstly, can I acknowledge that Edinburgh North and Leith is indeed a centre for the creative industries, and there are some very prominent and successful advertising agencies based there. I am right across the screen sector, whether it is from advertising, whether it is to television, whether it is to film, entirely focused on making sure that we get maximum value about this industry heading in the right direction. This is an industry which, by most recent studies, has been shown to be worth about £635 million gross value added a year, and has the potential to become a £1 billion industry by 2030. So I would encourage advertisers, I would encourage TV, those that commission TV programmes and also want to film for the big screen, to do so as much as possible in Scotland.
Alexander Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Cabinet Secretary, with the proposed development in Stirling, which would create one of the largest film studio campuses in Scotland, this would be a game changer for the film and television productions. Therefore, what is the Scottish Government doing to ensure that the project becomes a reality and has the potential to filter down to the wider supply chain, thus paving the way for a major economic benefit throughout the region?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, again, may I commend the questioner for the tone and content, because I think he has hit on some of the latest good news that we have in the screen sector. Over recent years, we've gone from a situation of having very limited studio capacity in Scotland to having significant studios right across the country. And the project in Stirling is indeed a game changer. That's why I visited the site. That's why Screen Scotland is intimately involved in supporting the development of the site, and I have very, very high hopes that it will be but the latest good news story in the general direction of travel for the screen sector in Scotland, and we should do everything to support that. And
briefly, George Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The BBC have described IMG Media, the production company behind over 1,000 multi-hour episodes of Scottish qualifying snooker programmes from the BBC, as a Scottish production company. IMG is based in Chiswick, West London. IMG rents a cupboard within BBC's Pacific Quay base in Glasgow, and now these thousands of hours of TV are regarded as Scottish. In a world where we can't even see the Scottish national football team in national and terrestrial television, what engagement has the Cabinet Secretary had with regards to the BBC defining such output as Scottish?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I answer in the same way as I have to other colleagues who have shared a concern that I have and the Scottish Government has, that the letter and the spirit of the rules in terms of commissioning in Scotland are upheld. That's the reason why I met with Ofcom and I met with the BBC to stress that I think there is growing unease about certain decisions supporting certain commissions and the apparent lack of Scottish involvement in that. I think it has become problematic. That's why I've held these meetings. I know it has been the subject of evidence sessions in the committee, and I know that both the BBC and Ofcom know that that questioning will continue.
Thank you. Question 3, Colin Beattie.
To ask the Scottish Government what support it's giving to local authorities to maintain arts and cultural programmes.
Cabinet Secretary.
Local authorities are accountable to the public who elect them and have the financial freedom to operate independently, and I'm in contact with the Convention of Scottish Local Authorities spokesperson for community wellbeing, Councillor Maureen Chalmers, who I met last month, and I will work with the culture conveners throughout 2025 on how local and national organisations can work together to support and to promote culture.
Colin Beattie.
Arts and culture are a key part of the identity of my constituency of Midlothian North and Musselburgh. The Brunton Theatre in Musselburgh holds a very special place in that town's heart. Following last month's announcement of Creative Scotland funding, can the Cabinet Secretary advise how this might help secure the future of the Brunton Theatre?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, may I begin firstly by paying tribute to Colin Beattie for the leadership that he's been showing on this particular issue. I recognise how disappointing East Lothian Council's difficult decision to close Brunton Theatre is. As I previously advised, it is a responsibility of individual local authorities to manage their own budgets, and it's also necessary to ensure that the building is safe. I do welcome the fact that the Brunton has already managed to continue to operate through other locations across East Lothian, and the excellent recent news is that they were successful in their application to Creative Scotland's multi-year funding programme with an award of £130,000. I look forward to seeing their plans on the use for this funding.
And a number of supplementaries. They'll need to be brief. Craig Hoy first.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. As the Cabinet Secretary may be aware, the community in Peebles is very concerned about the future of the Eastgate Theatre, which is a wonderful local arts venue. Creative Scotland is moving, as he said, towards a 3-year funding model. However, what provision can be put in place, in addition to long-term funding, where individual creative or arts venues face unexpected or short-term financial shortfalls, particularly where councils, who have themselves been underfunded by this SNP government for a number of years, are forced to reduce or withdraw funding that they give directly or through allies? Cabinet
Secretary.
Well, can I acknowledge the challenge that still faces organisations in the culture sector, notwithstanding the record increase in culture spending, which I commend this Parliament for voting for yesterday. I know Mr Hoy voted against that, but in answer specifically to his question, I would point his attention to the fact that there have been a number of announcements in addition to multi-annual year funding in terms of the Scottish Government's provisions of funding in terms of resilience and the development of different organisations. If he would wish to write to me specifically about this issue, I would be happy to enter correspondence with him on the matter at hand.
Neil Bibby.
It is welcome that a number of cultural organisations will see their funding increase. However, there is a concern generally that money given by one hand could be taken away by another, with increased rents given the knowledge of their increase in funding. Would the Cabinet Secretary agree that all providers of premises to cultural organisations, including local authorities, should not seek to take advantage of any uplift and therefore limit proposed increase in rents and other building costs?
Cabinet Secretary.
The biggest concern I have about one hand taking away while the other is giving is, frankly, the introduction of national insurance contributions by the Labour government. So I have made my point, and I will underline that point, because that is the biggest single challenge. In terms of local authorities and the provision of rentable property, I'm delighted that this Parliament passed the budget which will provide extra resources to local authorities, and that may go some way in being able to obviate the challenge that Mr Bibby identifies. But I would point out to the Chamber, of course, that Mr Bibby abstained on the question of whether local authorities should have more money, or indeed the culture sector have its record increase in funding.
And briefly, Stephen Kerr.
The Cabinet Secretary will have heard this morning at the Museums and Galleries Strategy Symposium, as I did, concerns about the future of local museums. And further to Craig Hoy's point about the SNP funding cuts to local authorities and the non-statutory nature of the funding of museums, what more can the Cabinet Secretary do in practical terms to ensure the survival of these important local collections, vital assets in our communities?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the first thing is, of course, the provision of funding through Museums and Galleries Scotland, and that helps in the provision of support for museums and galleries right across Scotland. I'm sure that Mr Kerr wasn't wanting to inadvertently mislead the Parliament in suggesting that funding for local government is going down as a result of the budget. As a result of the budget yesterday, which he voted against, funding for local government is going up. But if Mr Kerr has any specific issues that he would wish to draw to my attention, he knows that I'm a big supporter of protecting museums and galleries the length and breadth of Scotland, and if there's any way in which I, Creative Scotland or other parts of the Scottish Government can intervene to protect our cultural infrastructure, I would be happy to do just that.
Question 4, Jackie Baillie.
To ask the Scottish Government what plans it has for Dumbarton Castle.
Cabinet Secretary.
As the lead public body for the Historic Environment Scotland is responsible for the plans and care of Dumbarton Castle. I will ask Historic Environment Scotland to write directly to the member with the answer to her question. As I said to the Chamber in December, I'd be happy to take up the invitation to visit Dumbarton Castle with the member, and I can confirm that the arrangements for this visit are in hand.
Jackie Baillie.
I won't rehearse the importance of Dumbarton Castle in the history of Scotland, and I am pleased that the Cabinet Secretary will join me on a visit to Dumbarton Castle. But since I last raised this in the Chamber, I had a productive meeting in the constituency with Historic Environment Scotland, Friends of Dumbarton Castle and West Dumbartonshire Council, and we discussed a range of improvements required for the castle, and Historic Environment Scotland agreed to set out a strategic plan for the future, addressing repairs and conservation, attracting more visitors and returning some of the collection for display. Can the Cabinet Secretary set out a timetable for the plan to be implemented?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, may I praise the ingenious way in which Jackie Baillie invites me to publicise a plan from an arm's-length organisation which I do not manage on an operational basis. But I would reflect on the very encouraging update that she's given to Parliament. I look forward to her and Historic Environment Scotland briefing me more when we visit Dumbarton Castle. I do not need to rehearse the history of Dumbarton Castle. I know how important it is. And I look forward to working with Jackie Baillie, with other members, including other regional members of the Scottish Parliament for Dumbarton, and make sure that it is presented and supported in the way that she and everybody else would expect.
Question 5, Emma Harper.
To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to the announcement by Creative Scotland that it will provide multi-year funding to deliver cultural and creative programmes.
Cabinet Secretary.
As I outlined in my statement to Parliament on the 30th of January, Creative Scotland's multi-year funding provides a basis for Scotland's cultural sector to look to the future with optimism. A total of 251 cultural organisations will receive funding from 2025-26, with a further 13 organisations having the possibility of joining from 2026-27. Creative Scotland has been able to support every organisation that met the funding criteria because of the level of funding the Scottish Government has been able to commit. I'd like to reiterate my congratulations to all of the organisations that have secured financial support.
Emma Harper.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response. Can the Cabinet Secretary share how the Scottish Government, through Creative Scotland, will support smaller festivals which take place away from the Central Belt, which are created by the community, like the Stranraer Oyster Festival, Kirkcudbright Festival Light and the Big Burn Supper?
Cabinet Secretary.
I completely agree with Emma Harper about the importance that the member has placed in supporting festivals in all corners of the country, and that's why I initiated a strategic partnership for Scotland's arts festivals, ensuring that we can support Scotland's art festivals to flourish. Through the conversations I've had across the culture sector, my focus has been turning intent into delivery, and the budget reflects this intent by providing £4 million of additional support for Scotland's arts festivals, and this includes a £3 million expansion of the Expo Festival Fund to enhance the work undertaken by existing Expo Fund recipients and broaden the scope of the fund right across the country.
Colin Smith.
Thank you, President Officer. The loss of festivals in Dumfries and Galloway has had a big impact on the region, particularly when funding streams have been removed, such as the Winter Festivals Fund, by the Government. So will the Cabinet Secretary, in his role as Chair of the Strategic Partnership for Festival, meet with myself and representatives of festivals in the region, such as the Big Burn Supper, to discuss how we can best support re-establishing some of those important festivals in the region?
Cabinet Secretary.
Happy to give a brief answer, Presiding Officer. Yes, I am delighted to meet with Colin Smith to hold those discussions.
Thank you. Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Scottish Opera has received backing from the International Touring Fund, which is very beneficial in supporting their activities abroad. However, as only events outside the UK qualify for ITF funding, this seriously restricts their viability regarding performances before audiences in London and elsewhere in the UK. Can the Cabinet Secretary say what work is being undertaken to widen the fund's scope to enable Scottish Opera to perform in other UK nations?
Cabinet Secretary.
So the Scottish Government is providing an uplift of £1 million in funding across our 5 national performing companies in 2025-26, which includes a boost to the International Touring Fund. This investment takes our core funding to the highest level since 2011-12. The Scottish Government continues to regularly engage with Scottish Opera and the other national performing companies for an evolving consensus on how the shared International Touring Fund can be best utilised to contribute to their touring ambitions and enhance the reputation of Brand Scotland on the global stage. My officials recently met with all 5 national performing companies and welcomed their views on the purposes of the International Touring Fund, which officials are taking forward in their discussions.
Briefly, Stephen Kerr.
My question is in relation to the review of Creative Scotland by Dame Sue Bruce. When will the Cabinet Secretary be in a position to spell out in detail the exact remit? We know that the review is due to be published in the summer, but will he spell out also a timetable for the review?
Cabinet Secretary, so far as is relevant to the opening question.
I'm reminding myself of the question in relation to multi-year funding, but no doubt Dame Sue Bruce will, in addition to looking at the impact of multi-annual year funding on the creative sector, will be looking, as I have asked her to do, look more broadly at the workings of Creative Scotland. I've already outlined the timescale for that, but I'd be happy to write to the member in terms of the scope and remit of that, which I am being advised on by Dame Sue Bruce as well.
Thank you. Question 6, Willie Coffey.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government how it supports virtual libraries.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government funds the Scottish Library and Information Council's Public Library Improvement Fund, which supports both the physical and the virtual library offer. The fund has supported multiple local authorities to access equipment, training and resources to take library services online. In Mr Coffey's constituency, the On the Road to Digital Success project provided digital access and assistance to communities across East Ayrshire, and the Scottish Library and Information Council are committed to blending the digital and the physical space to create an offer responsive to evolving needs.
Willie Coffey.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. The digital revolution makes it possible for anyone on earth who has a connection to be able to access all of the richest material and knowledge that we have ever gathered in human history. And virtual libraries play a key part in opening up that access. Does the Scottish Government see a continuing role for this, so that our wonderful Scottish resources and archives in written and spoken word, in music and art, can be digitised and made accessible for the benefit of everyone from my constituents in Kilmarnock and Irvine Valley to the furthest corners of the globe?
Cabinet Secretary.
So absolutely yes, we are very supportive of digitisation efforts that ensure that Scotland's cultural assets are accessible to a domestic and to a global audience. To give just 2 examples, the National Library of Scotland is already undertaking extensive work to digitise its collection, with 1/3 of it now in digital format. This includes thousands of maps, moving images, books, newspapers and journals. And Historic Environment Scotland provides access to extensive digital resources. These range from curated online exhibitions to interactive online maps showing archaeological and historical sites, as well as modern and past land use across the country.
Thank you. Question 7 and question 8 were not lodged. Therefore, that concludes questions on Constitution, External Affairs and Culture. There will be a brief pause before we move to the next portfolio to allow front benches to change. And the next portfolio is Justice and Home Affairs. As ever, members wishing to ask a supplementary should press the request to speak buttons during the relevant question. Again, there's quite a bit of demand for supplementary, so brevity in both questions and responses would be appreciated. And I call question number 1, Colette Stevenson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on its national strategy for community justice, including the delivery of the sustainable housing on release for everyone standards across all local authorities.
Cabinet Secretary Angela Constance.
Presiding Officer, the third update to the delivery plan is in development and will cover April to December 2024. Local authorities have a legal duty to provide assistance to people who are at risk of or experiencing homelessness, including prison leavers. In November 2024, a refreshed version of the Shore Standards was completed, which aims to ensure the housing needs of people in prison are addressed at an early stage, and work to embed these standards across all SPS establishments and local authorities is ongoing, including a pilot project involving South Lanarkshire Council and HMP Addywell, and that's to improve access to housing on release for people on remand.
Colette Stevenson.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that information. The Shore Standards require prison and local authority staff to work together to support new prisoners to manage tenancies, prevent debt being accrued and avoid homelessness on release. Important interventions that help reduce reoffending. However, I supported a constituent who did not receive the support he should have through Shore. After his housing benefit was stopped due to his sentence, he left prison with an avoidable £3,000 of debt, including rent arrears for a council house he did not want. Can the Cabinet Secretary provide an update on developments in the past couple of years since my constituent experienced these issues in terms of the Shore Standards, including ongoing work to ensure relevant support is provided to help prisoners deal with tenancies to avoid racking up avoidable debt?
We will need shorter questions. Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, very sorry to hear of the problems experienced by Ms Stevens' constituent, and to thank her for raising them in Chamber today. The Shore Standards provide that SPS, local authorities and housing staff, and also relevant third sector organisations, should work together to support persons in custody, either to end or sustain their tenancy as appropriate. And work, as I mentioned earlier, is ongoing to embed the Shore Standards across the prison estates and local authorities, so that there is some consistency in how people are supported from the point at which they enter custody to the point at which they are released. And partners should be working collaboratively with individuals from 5 days after entry to custody to inquire about housing circumstances and thereafter plan for suitable accommodation and provide the ongoing support as part of the case management approach.
Briefly, Polly McNeill.
As part of the strategy, another Cabinet Secretary agrees that we need to improve through care services. The Wise Group recently advised me that one of the big issues here for those offenders leaving prison is that they lose their placing on a GP list, and it's one of the stumbling blocks getting them resettled back into the community. Can the Cabinet Secretary give consideration to find a way around this, perhaps freezing their listing on the GP list, so that it's much easier for them when they leave prison to be able to take their position up with their GP?
Cabinet Secretary.
Officer, the short answer is I will give that very serious consideration indeed. There is certainly work ongoing now to improve the connectivity between prison healthcare services and the healthcare services that people are entitled to upon release. But I will pursue that and keep the member updated.
Question 2, Ros McCall.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what discussions the Justice Secretary has had with ministerial colleagues regarding action to counter the reported proliferation of child sex abuse images online.
Minister Siobhan Brown.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. This is a really deeply concerning issue. We are raising awareness on how to stay safe online and support young people to navigate online spaces and use screen time in a safe way, and to help parents and carers to ensure that they have the information to guide young people and recognise risks. The Minister for Children and I have formed a new online safety task force alongside the strategic group, which will identify actions to address online harm. As part of this, we wrote last month to the UK Government urging increased action to protect children. We also supported the establishment of the Child Sexual Abuse and Exploitation National Strategic Group to increase cross-sector working to address the risk of child sexual abuse and exploitation.
Ros McCall.
I thank the Minister for the response. She'll be aware of more than 3,000 child sexual abuse crimes that have been recorded by Police Scotland over the past 5 years. With the last 2 years alone, these reports have reached record levels, with more than 700 offences being lodged each year. And last year, Childline delivered 903 counselling sessions to young people relating to blackmail or threats to expose or share sexual images online, which was a 7% increase compared to 22-23. Minister, the Scottish Government needs to take a bold stance against perpetrators of these crimes and provide sufficient deterrent to ensure that would-be perpetrators think twice. So what specific actions are Police Scotland taking to keep our children safe from harm?
Minister.
Thank you, and I recognise the concerns that's been raised in the increase in crimes related to indecent images of children. It might be helpful, if I may, just to highlight some of the things that Police Scotland are doing in relation to the recommendations from a strategic review on Police Scotland's response to online child sexual abuse, which was published in February 2020. There has been progress made, but the key achievements include the introduction of a single corporate name for online child sexual abuse and its use as a standard flag on common computer applications and databases, alongside the introduction of a national crime recording system. Dedicated analytical capacity has also been provided to examine online child sexual abuse. Clearer internal strategic governance was put in place, and strategic threat assessments on online sexual abuse were produced and has increased responses to the investigation.
Thank you. And brief supplementary, Rona Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. What response has the Minister had from the UK Government to the letter sent in January on improving online safety for children, including through legislation?
Briefly, Minister.
Thank you. We have not yet received a response from our letter to the UK Government ministers. However, I do hope that we will receive one soon, and from there we can meet to discuss the issues outlined in our letter. When it comes to keeping our children safe online, it is clearly an issue both governments have concerns about, and we do want to work constructively with them to tackle this growing threat to our children's well-being. One of the issues raised in our letter was, for example, the protections provided in the EU's Digital Services Act, which provides an increased protection more than the UK's wide Online Safety Act. And in the meantime, Scottish Government and UK Government officials have met to discuss the issues raised in the letter.
Thank you. Question 3, John Mason.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on Police Scotland's work to tackle the issue of uncontrolled pyrotechnics at football matches.
Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The misuse of pyrotechnics is a serious issue which will require collective and a concerted effort to eradicate. Police Scotland, football authorities and the Scottish Government officials have been working in partnership to develop a cohesive response to this issue. This includes joint participation in the Pyrotechnics Football Short Life Working Group established by Police Scotland and I look forward to hearing about progress that they are making. Additionally, we provided stop and search powers under the Firework and Pyrotechnic Articles Scotland Act 2022 and are exploring options including how existing available measures such as football banning orders could be utilised to greater effect and whether further measures are needed. The SPFL Trust is developing a pyrotechnics education programme to be delivered through clubs to those with football banning orders or club bans for pyrotechnic misuse.
John Mason.
I thank the Minister very much for that answer and also for her letter to me of 11th February on similar subjects. And in her letter, she particularly mentions prevention. And I wonder, some of her answer just now suggested maybe greater punishment after the event, but can we not do more to search and stop pyrotechnics going into the grounds in the first place?
Minister.
Thank you. I think the stop and search powers that came into effect in the possession in June 2023, we have asked Police Scotland, Pyrotechnics, the working group, to give full consideration to this and to establish the effectiveness of the powers of this legislation. However, it is important to recognise that there is no single action which will provide an easy resolution to the problem of pyrotechnic misuse at football.
Question 4, Annabel Ewing.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the establishment of the Emma Caldwell Public Inquiry.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, the First Minister and I met with the Caldwell family on 21st of January to hear their views on next steps, including the appointment of a chair for the public inquiry and also ways to progress the criminal investigation of the initial police inquiry. The Scottish Government will ensure the inquiry is set up and properly resourced to carry out its important work. Once a chair has been appointed, we will work alongside that chair and Emma's family in setting and agreeing the terms of reference for the inquiry. And we will, of course, continue to liaise with the Crown Office to understand the implications of the criminal investigation for the setting up of the inquiry.
Annabel Ewing.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for her answer, and I know that she is absolutely committed to ensuring that fresh scrutiny is brought to bear on this case, given the gravity of the issues raised. Whilst as a lawyer I well understand the legal hurdles still extant, can the Cabinet Secretary nonetheless give some indication as to when the chair will be appointed so that some progress can be made in the meantime?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I thank Ms Ewan for her question and indeed for her interest and support. After discussing the chair appointment with the family, we are in agreement that the most important thing is that the person who leads the inquiry has the confidence of the family. Discussions, I can assure the member, are currently progressing and we will continue to listen carefully to the views of the family, and I will update Parliament when a decision has been taken.
Question 5, Willie Rennie.
To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to reports that the number of police officer and police staff working days lost due to mental health illness has risen in recent years.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, while this is an operational matter for the Chief Constable, I do welcome her commitment to the well-being of both police officers and staff. Police Scotland has made £17 million investment in their employee assistance programme, which will focus on mental health support. Police Scotland has signed up to the Mental Health at Work commitment and standards, and the 2024 HMICS report on frontline wellbeing recognised that Police Scotland is good at supporting officers at points of crisis. Police Scotland currently provides a comprehensive range of services to both officers and police staff, and this includes 24/7 employee assistance programme and direct access to occupational health services to support mental wellbeing.
Willie Rennie.
Is certainly welcome, but the reality is that the number of staff days lost has increased significantly. Since 2019, there's been almost 500,000 days have been lost because of mental ill health. And keeping communities safe starts by supporting those at the heart of the policing, and I'm sure the Cabinet Secretary would agree with that. So why is it that despite all the promises, mental health is plummeting? And will the Cabinet Secretary at least agree to regular staff surveys and a mental health first aider installed in every police workplace?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I do indeed recognise that every day Scotland's police officers and staff are dedicated to keeping our communities safe and keeping them safe and supported. And it's very often our officers and staff that are running towards danger, placing themselves in front of that danger to protect the public. In terms of the regular staff surveys, this has been something that I have discussed with the Chief Constable in our regular meetings, and she's very committed to regular staff surveys. And in terms of his suggestion about first aiders, mental health first aiders being readily available, I will discuss that when we next meet her.
Thank you. A couple of brief supplementaries. First, Audrey Nicholl.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. The Cabinet Secretary will be aware of the interest being taken by the Criminal Justice Committee on officer and staff mental wellbeing, and while it's clear that there has been a lot of progress made in this area, I wonder if the Cabinet Secretary can outline any further detail on the access that may be available to officers and staff that is of a more specialist nature that goes beyond that early preventative role.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I think there's 2 points to Ms Nichols' question. There is the support that is absolutely necessary when officers find themselves in danger to protect others or are witnesses to very traumatic circumstances. And with that regard, there is the Trauma Risk Management Programme. And I'm also very mindful of the point that His Majesty Inspector of Constabulary for Scotland said when he spoke about the day-to-day demands on the job and how that can have an impact on the mental health of serving police officers. And that's why the £17 million investment and focus on mental health support and access to enhanced occupational health services is of particular importance.
And briefly, Liam Kerr.
Between 2020 and 2024, non-sexual crimes of violence were up 10%, sexual crimes were up 11% and crimes of dishonesty were up 16%. Now, as at June 2024, the number of police officers had fallen to its lowest level in 17 years, whilst many aspects of the estate and resources continue to decline. So if we accept that fewer officers dealing with rising crime using older resources, all matters within the ambit of this government, is going to lead to harder workloads, greater stress, mental health challenges and more burnout. What is this government's specific plan to make life easier for our officers?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, Presiding Officer, this government has a very robust approach in terms of the £1.62 billion that will be invested in policing in Scotland, subject to the budget passing yesterday. I'm also pleased to see that the latest official statistics that as of December, police officer numbers were at over 16,500, and indeed the Deputy Chief Constable Alan Spears confirmed last month that police officer numbers, their establishment was 16,614. We, of course, will be wrestling with the demands of employers' national insurance contributions, but I should remind the member, not disputing the changing nature of crime that he has highlighted, which requires very focused, but I should remind him that the statistic published earlier this week do show overall a 1% decrease in recorded crime, and that this country remains a safer place under this government.
Question 6, Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what action it and its partner organisations are taking to tackle antisocial behaviour in city centres.
Minister.
Thank you. We support Police Scotland and local authorities to invest in prevention, early intervention and diversionary activities to reduce antisocial behaviour. In 2025 to 26, we have increased police funding to a record £1.62 billion. Our draft budget also makes an additional £3 million available for Police Scotland to work alongside the retail sector to tackle shoplifting and other retail crime. At a national level, we will also fund initiatives and local multi-agencies response work to target issues including on violence reduction and through our Cashback for Communities programme. I commissioned the independent group on antisocial behaviour because I am committed to ensuring a strong response to antisocial behaviour that puts victims and communities at the centre of support. And yesterday they published their wide-ranging report, and I, along with our lead partners, COSLA and Police Scotland, are considering the recommendations.
Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank the Minister for the answer. In Aberdeen and other places, we have witnessed the rise in masked individuals zooming around our cities on e-bikes, often clearly engaged in illegal activity. While the actual numbers may be small, their visibility is great and is creating real concern for ordinary folk. What measures are being taken to tackle this menace?
Minister.
Thank you. We support Police Scotland and its partners in dealing with misuse of vehicles, including e-bikes, and any nuisance and danger caused. Enforcement is a matter for Police Scotland, and local policing teams are best placed to identify misuse and work to prevent future incidents. The police have powers to enforce the law, such as illegal riding on pavements, using road safety, public disorder and dispersal powers, which includes being able to seize vehicles if appropriate. Police Scotland seized 281 dangerous e-bikes between January and September 2024, and seizing vehicles as part of hard deterrence and enforcement is happening nationally, with stepped-up patrols warning illegal and reckless bikers that their vehicles will be seized.
Number of supplementaries. I'll get in as many as I can, but they'll need to be brief. For Sharon Dowie.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Towns and villages across the south of Scotland also suffer badly from this issue. I routinely hear from shopkeepers about the fearlessness of violent thieves, many of whom are young people and many of whom have travelled from cities to specifically target smaller communities. The verdict from workers is always the same. The people responsible simply don't feel the consequences because there are none. So can I ask what specific plans the Scottish Government has to finally strike some fear into these reckless and dangerous individuals so they know their actions will have consequences?
Minister.
The offenders will be reported to the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Services. Whilst we have seen an increase in reports and theft by shoplifting, the detection rate has also increased, with charges being brought in around 50% of reported incidents. Police Scotland will continue to work closely with retailers through the Scottish Partnership Against Acquisitive Crime strategy to deter, prevent and investigate all reported crimes.
Daniel Johnson.
If the Minister wants evidence of this behaviour, she only needs to walk up to the Meadows, where there are tyre tracks left by individuals masked driving ATVs just last Thursday in the early hours. What is needed is new standard operating procedures and equipment, because without those, the police are just incapable of intervening. Will the Minister engage with the police so that those things can be put in place?
Minister.
Yes, I will, and I have engaged this week with MSPs and the police on this particular issue.
Thank you. And Douglas Ross.
Presiding Officer, I remind the Chamber that my wife is a police sergeant in Murray. The Cabinet Secretary and the Minister will surely be aware that a Freedom of Information request from the Northern Scot newspaper has shown that between 2019 and 2024, antisocial behaviour at Elgin Bus Station has increased by 900%. And of course, Elgin Bus Station was the location of the killing of bus driver Keith Rawlinson a year ago. Does the Minister agree that the multi-agency work must be ongoing there to get this number back down again? But does she also accept that we had more officers available on the beat in Murray, they would act as a deterrent for antisocial behaviour at the bus station?
Yes, and I absolutely agree that multi-agency work will be needed in Elgin.
Thank you. Question 7, Bill Kidd.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it can provide an update on the Cashback for Communities programme.
Minister.
Thank you. During the current Phase 6 of the programme, which runs to March 2026, we are providing funding up to £20 million to 29 partnership organisations, and the projects aim to reach around 34,000 children and young people. In 2023 to 2024, we supported over 15,000 young people to reduce their involvement in the criminal justice system, improve their well-being and move towards our positive destination. The annual impact report, which was published in December last year, shows that the programme exceeded all its targets. Key outcomes included 4,300 young people reported reduced involvement in antisocial and criminal activity, and over 8,300 reported improved health and well-being, and over 64,000 volunteering hours supported local communities.
Bill Kidd.
I thank the Minister for her reply. With Phase 6 funding ending next March, can the Minister say whether Phase 7 funding will be in place in this parliamentary term, and if so, when the new application process will open?
Minister.
Thank you. We're currently working with stakeholders to consider a 7th phase of the Cashback Communities programmes, and we will announce the plans for that later this year. The current programme, as I said, is set to end in March next year, so the plans will be in place by then. Cashback supports young people at risk of entering criminal justice system and the communities most affected by crime through various projects. Since its inception, the programme has committed £130 million to supporting around 1.3 million young people across all 32 local authorities in Scotland.
And question 8, Maurice Golden.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what it is doing to improve the way the justice system handles crimes involving animals.
Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. There is a range of legislation in place in Scotland to address crimes involving animals. This allows for relevant police and prosecutorial action to be taken and also provides significant sentencing powers to the court. When sentencing, courts have wide discretion to consider the facts and circumstances. For example, this includes taking into account the harm arising from a dog theft, such as the impact on the dog's health and well-being, as well as the distress caused to the owner. Under the Animals and Wildlife Penalties Protections and Powers Act 2020, the Scottish Government is also progressing a review of the requirement for any additional animal welfare, animal health or wildlife offences.
Maurice Golden.
The Minister for that answer. This morning I launched my Dog Theft Scotland Bill at Edinburgh Dog and Cat Home with the wonderful Cooper, who is available for rehoming. And this bill will help to deter and punish those involved in snatching people's pets. But does the Minister agree that it can also help ensure more clarity and certainty in law for police and courts when advising the public, investigating cases and bringing prosecutions?
Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank the member, and I have met with the member to discuss his member's bill, and I appreciate the theft of a very much loved pet can be a very traumatic experience for owners. It will be for Parliament to consider the details of the recently introduced Members' Bill from Maurice Golden relating to dog theft. I was listening to the radio this morning and listening to some conversations regarding police, so yes, I do take that on board. The Scottish Government notes the bill has been introduced and we will consider carefully the content of the bill.
Thank you. That concludes portfolio questions on Justice and Home Affairs. Point of order, Douglas Ross.
I'm grateful, Presiding Officer. At the previous Justice portfolio questions, I asked a question about police dog Zara being put down by Police Scotland, and the Minister promised to write to me about the lack of insurance for police dogs. I use this point of order to gently remind the Minister that I still haven't received a response, and I have followed that up with her. But I genuinely ask you, Presiding Officer, is there any guidance that Ministers should respond to commitments to update members between one portfolio question and another on the same subject? Because it would be useful to have some kind of time frame, particularly because the same question may have been raised today.
I appreciate the point, Mr Ross. It's not a point of order and it's not something on which the Chair can rule. I'm going to allow a brief pause to allow the front benches to change before we move to the next item of business.